Good evening, my gruesome little people, and welcome to the renewed and continuing What Now live streams, where we are celebrating something of what I have reason to believe is a milestone of some sort, because, dear God in heaven, could it be? Why, yes, it is. We have reached 100, indeed 113 subscribers to the What Now Vault. Fuck knows why, but we are extravagantly pleased to have them with us. And who do we have with us? Dal, how could I ever do without you? And quite clearly, I am going to have to do with you. It is just me and thee, my darling Andromedan sister. Or at least, hang on, I am going without spectacles because the reflection from that light is so ridiculous that, well, you'll see. See? Can't see a damn thing. Oh, holy hell, we have people here. Ah, we do have a doll, and we have an Adega outlaw. My goodness, sir. So good of you to join us for this little party. So we have Dal, we have a Dagger, and we have one lurker. We have one stranger in our midst, but all are welcome here. Yes, so these are going off now because it's doing my head in. And also I'm slightly more attractive with moth. It it really is it's a slight improvement. I always imagine when I take my glasses off, it's like that stereotype of the librarian. Yeah, she takes off her glasses and shakes out her hair, and suddenly her tits are a size bigger. It's a little. Yep, it works. It's definitely one of those. So, a little while ago, as indeed it says in the description of this video, I hit 100 subscribers. Indeed, it was while I was doing the stream with Dal. And around that time, I got a commission as an editor, my first paid job to use my degree. And I was helping somebody work on their book, and it took all of my goddamn time. And in that time, indeed, up until I did the other stream earlier today, which is over on Dal's channel, and we had a riotously good time. I went over to 113 subscribers, and I understand that it's one of those things where you mark the occasion. So what we're going to do today, because frankly I do not have the resources to do anything else, and frankly outside of the subscriber count, I have nothing more to celebrate at this particular moment in time. We are going to have one of those Q&A sessions because it has come to my attention through various avenues that I have a little bit of a mysterious, or at least some kind of idiosyncratic reputation within our community. I like to think it's a little of how the general population of the Roman Empire considered the British Isles. It is a very dark, very mysterious, very frightening place, and the majority of them didn't even believe they existed. So I like to think that's what this is all about. But yes, we're going to have a little Q&A should anybody wish to know anything on any topic whatsoever, because I'm really not a terribly interesting individual. But if you want to know anything, I will answer. Holy shit! Could it be? Yes, it is! You came back to me! My most beloved cephalopod, so good to have you with us! Well, I'll tell you what, we'll swap, but mine are incredibly hairy. So if you're fond of wearing undershirts or vests, you may want to go without what I like to call the man wool. The I can't say any. Very good, Dal. Very good. Dear me, here we are. I am a cryptid sort of creature. I've always wanted to do one of those. One of my favorite books is Last Chance to See, by Douglas Adams and the zoologist Mark Carwadine, where they travelled around the world looking for the most endangered animals at the time. I think they wrote it in 1986, and 3 of the animals they went exploring for are now extinct. But it's a wonderful book. It's both informative and hilarious at the same time. But I've always wanted to write a book where I went around the world looking for cryptids and wrote a sort of natural history of them, mainly because I want to hang out with those lunatics in the Pacific Northwest who think they're talking to Bigfoot. I really want to hang out with them. But I have been to Loch Ness. I'm the only person I know who has swam in Loch Ness. It is amazingly cold. I have also swam in the Atlantic, and I think Loch Ness was colder. My editing rate, they vary. It differs from project to project. The project I've just done was developmental stuff. It was essentially a research and development document, and we thrashed it out in such a way because the wonderful gentleman who was kind enough to hire me, and he hasn't been back in touch. So I'm assuming that it was to his liking. I think if he hadn't have appreciated the effort, he would have got in touch immediately, particularly as I offered to fix anything he didn't like for no extra cost. He was paying me out of a commission that he was being paid for. So it's rather borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. So it varies out. I mean, Lord knows I actually ended up doing about 55% more work than he paid for, but he was such a nice guy, and really the work sort of warranted it. OMG indeed. Where you can swim in Loch Ness. Yes, it's not owned by anyone. It's I think the National Trust, which is no, it's not the National Trust. There's another version of it, but Britain's version of the National Parks Service keeps Dixie on it, keeps tabs on it, keeps eyes on it. God, all these fucking colloquialisms. I do apologize. But yes, it's beautiful. It's staggeringly beautiful. And when you walk into it, it's just slopes down very neatly and then plummets almost at once. So I'm for sake of argument, saying 5'9". I got about as far as my waist walking, and then boom, down, bobbing away. And I tell you, the landscape is so evocative because, like all the lochs and indeed the Great Glen itself, were created by glacial retreats. Basically, it's just a glacier that melted, and that's what you have is what stayed there. And there's mountains on either side. The loch has its own microclimate. It has the weather on the water is different to the weather on the shore. It's a wonderful meteorological and geographical phenomenon. And mountains on either side, beautiful ancient greenery, and it's very, very quiet because it's so big. The tourists can spread out all the way, so you don't actually see anyone unless you want to go looking for them. And even if you're a perfectly rationally minded individual and you don't believe in the monster, when you are in that black water and it's completely silent and you're up to your chin in it, yeah, some little ancient ape at the back of your head just says, you are in danger. You are in extreme danger. There is something in here with you. And of course, that's true for stages of pikes or whatever, but the legends are true. So yes, you can go swimming in Loch Ness. I wouldn't recommend it in October. But of course, did you see Nessie? No, I didn't, and I actively went looking for her. Because again, I'm obsessed with cryptozoology. I'm obsessed with this whole avenue of thought, even though I don't particularly believe it. I'm more than willing to accept that the world is far more mysterious than we can perceive. But I sort of draw the line at elasmosaurs that have somehow survived 70 million years in Scotland. There's saltwater, freshwater, why can't I get, anyway. But there's a fantastic story that, because the first modern sighting of the Loch Ness Monster was in the early 1930s, when an English couple on holiday, they were on their way to Inverness, and they had just built the first major road, and it ran alongside the banks of the loch. And they were driving along in the dead of night when he slams on the brakes of a car very suddenly, and this thing lumbers out of the trees very awkwardly. He said it was like a seal, and it flopped its way painfully across the road into the loch and fucked off. That's a technical term. I don't know if you've spent any amount of time amongst zoologists, but to describe something as it just fucked off is a perfectly acceptable way of getting around things. But the fortnight before, Aleister Crowley, the great English occultist, had a bit of a crisis of personality. If you've read much Crowley, you know that they were sort of 10 a penny. But he'd retreated from London, and he'd gone to stay with got to stay at a friend's house in Scotland, because he convinced himself that he wasn't who he said he was, that his powers were nothing. And while he was up there to sort of clear his mind, he went out into the water, and this is a matter of historical fact. He went out into the water and attempted to summon something. And because nothing appeared to him there and then, he considered it a failure, and he went. I think that's the time he fucked off to Europe. Again, fucked off. And then within a fortnight, the first sighting of a monster. Now, these are two stories of tenuous connection and tenuous historicity. We know that Crowley was there. We know that those two people were on that road, etc., etc. But the fact that they overlap is quite nice. You didn't answer for. Oh, I thought I did. Yes, it changes from on basis to basis. It depends on what is after. Proofreading is one thing. Line edit is another. A full report, because this is basically the only thing my master's degree has qualified me for, is to be an editor. So I can break a book down into a full. I prefer doing the report style to those when you open up Word or Google Docs and put the little sidebars in, because I think they rather ruin the concentration. I think unless it's a line edit or a proofreading, that's a different matter. But if it's for a full edit, I prefer to do report style, because then the author can take their manuscript, take the report, and that way you are not stepping on the toes of their particular voice. You are looking at the bigger picture, you are looking at the mechanics of it, but they do it in the way that is appropriate to their own style. So it really depends. I have it's right there, it's right in front of me. I have a saved tab on what the Freelance Editing Association, I think it's called, has for its rate. So it's on a matter of what is required and the length of the manuscript. But yes, he was also a dick. Frankly, Aleister Crowley was by reputation one of the most deeply unpleasant men who ever lived. It's a shame, but having read a couple of his works and being the quiet student of the occult that I am, I'm also not 100% certain he actually developed anything all that new that wasn't purely ornamental. Because then you go along and you read the likes of Phil Hine or God, I've got such a terrible memory for names. Peter J. Carroll. There we are. And you go along and you read Psychonaut and you read the Liber Null. It's it's basic. They struck me, the Chaos Magicians struck me as being the Martin Luther to Crowley's Pope. They're stripping away the bells and the whistles, because really, when you get down to it, and I do apologize if this is a little bit vulgar, but the amount of Crowley stuff, it's like this was just to get you laid. This was, and my God, the amount of masturbation in it. It's, I mean, okay, I understand the time frame he was working in, but when he was working, it must have been so goddamn scandalous, and that's all he wanted. He was a contrarian. He wanted to be scandalous and out there. So really, frankly, Aleister Crowley was just a fucking edgelord who got lucky. What will have you? Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of people. Because he's sort of the big name. Frankly, I take my lead from John Dee. Would be my touchstone for it. But yeah, he occupies a massive point because he was so ostentatious. He had this cult of personality, and I can't remember what his real name was, but he changed it so numerically it added up to the number of the beast, and then insisted on calling himself the Beast. And all I can say is, if he'd ever come around my way, he got the shit kicked out of him. He was little fucking poser. And now people forget about the likes of Austin Osman Spare, who the Chaos Magicians really do like. And people forget that, again, terrible name from, Last of the Beat Generation, wrote Junkie. Who wrote Junkie? It'll come to me. Cut up. He really pioneered the cut-up technique. It's gone. It's completely gone. But anyway, he was practicing it as well. Hello. Divided by Sight. Lauren, so good of you to join us. I mean, I have played to smaller audiences than this before, but it is excellent to have you all here. Hello, Adega. What do we have? There's some evidence that George Bush Sr.'s wife was an illegitimate child of his. Oh, of Crowley's. Oh, right. I thought you meant of Bush 41. Oh God, Jesus Christ. Yes, there's also the feeling that Justin Trudeau is the illegitimate child of Fidel Castro, and there's a little bit to go along with that. But I'm a fan of conspiracy theories in the same way I'm a fan of ghost stories. I don't believe in ghosts, but I like a good ghost story. And yeah, well, see, I say first encounter with the occult, but I don't really count Louisiana voodoo and Haitian voodoo because I grew up around. Yeah, in the same way, I probably wouldn't count Roman Catholicism in mine, because as I have discussed before, the Roman Catholic Church is probably the largest occult organization on the face of the earth. And oddly enough, I don't even mean that in a negative. It's just an observable fact. But the entire makeup of it, there are, so far as I can think, just off the top of my head, the two most occult organizations in the world remaining are the Vatican and the British Parliament, because the hullabaloo that goes through in order to make Parliament legal, and what is a law if not an act of magic. Although there's this fantastic little tidbit. I don't know if any of you know this, but okay. First and foremost, one of my political allegiances is I'm an English Republican, which means something different here than it does in the States. In the condition of my country, it means that I object to the existence of a monarchy. I am an anti-monarchist. Would much rather have an elected head of state. But for the time being, after the English Civil War, the parliamentarians won. And Charles I was executed, showing once and for all that no one, in theory anyway, in this country is above the law because we killed a king for it. And we had a little while of being a republic, didn't work out. Where was I going with this? Oh yes, I remember. So since that day, the monarch is not allowed in the House of Commons. If the monarch enters the House of Commons, it delegitimizes every law that had been passed within it. It's a magical rule. But at the state opening of Parliament, the only place the monarch can go is the House of Lords. So the emissary of the Queen goes to the Commons, which is our version of the House of Representatives, if anybody was uncertain, and they slam the door in his face, and he has to beg entry to get in, showing that the people are supreme above the crown. And then you'll see the image of the Queen with the imperial jewels and the coat or whatever. But in the Palace of Westminster, there is a special chamber put aside for the monarch to change into their robes. And next to the mirror, where as she puts on the ermine-lined cloak and the gloves and the imperial crown and the jewels, next to the mirror where she examines herself is a framed copy of the death warrant of King Charles I. So she can only go into Parliament after having been given a very stark reminder of what happened to the last monarch who fucked with the will of the people. And you don't really get that anywhere else. Yeah. You gotta see what's inside the Hungarian Parliament, and they don't even... It's a gorgeous building. I have seen photographs of the building. I would love to see it. Oh, what have I clicked? I love this conversation about it. Yeah, it is. And it's all magic. I still maintain to this day it is all an act of magic. Everything to do with the crown is magical. Yes, it is, but it's also surprisingly effective. It's up until the moment I'm speaking in, we haven't really had a threat of a civil war again, but check in next week and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's a remarkable turn of events. It all boils down to a point just before the Civil War, where there was a group of members of Parliament led by Oliver Cromwell, who had been writing very scandalous articles about the king, because the king had been doing otherwise perfectly reasonable things like stealing from the treasury to pay for his own housing. And he's not supposed to do that. The monarch makes money from their own estates, but was stealing from the public purse and was trying to force through laws without the consent of Parliament. And he shut it down, which was illegal, and made it again. And it was getting really, really bad. And so one day, at a sitting in the House of Commons, the king and a squadron of soldiers turn up to the Commons, kick the speaker out of his chair. The king sits there and he demands that the MPs be handed over to him, basically for torture and execution. And it's one of the most famous moments in the history. There's not a lot in British history that makes me want to stand up and applaud, but this was one of those moments, because not all of them were there. Only 3 of them were present. But he demanded that the speaker point them out and hand them over. And I can't do it verbatim, but the speaker said, if it please your majesty, I have no eyes to see, no, I have no ears to hear, nor tongue to speak, lest this house give me leave to do so. Which is 17th century speak for, fuck off, I don't work for you. And then was a civil war, and they cut off Charles I's head, which was another excellent moment in English history. Where do you get all of these incredible pieces of... For a very, very, very long time. I mean, I've always been a student of history. I sometimes regret that I didn't do it at university, but creative writing seemed a way of being able to study everything. So I've always read history. I've always studied it from as long as I could, from as early as I could, rather. But for quite a long time, I was a terrible insomniac. I still have bouts of it now. I'm nowhere near as bad as I used to be. I mean, the longest I went was about 4.5 days of just no sleep. I was completely white, and the only thing I could do to soothe the popping candy in my head was to read. So I started. World history seemed as good as any. Yes, ask me anything, and I will do my damnedest to answer it. At the moment, I'm deep in British history again because I'm researching for my new book, which frankly I should have started writing properly. I've started it about 5 times now. I think I think I've started about 5 times, but I'm also researching for the argument for my PhD proposal and for a history AuthorTube series that I've discussed with Dal, and I will discuss further if anyone's interested. But I have something here. What inspires you? That is a hell of a question, Lauren. No small questions here today. I I like oddities. I I look for the things that don't make sense, if you see what I mean. There are like these little border places in human thought that don't entire where you can see one thing hasn't quite gelled with the other. And I'm very interested in them. I'm very interested in exceptions and unpacking them. So if I can find things, indeed I go actively looking for them, that don't exactly work, that in the usual scheme of things, that really inspires me. And you'll never find a better subject for that than human beings, because human beings are the most contradictory things in the universe. They are a mess of paradoxes and non sequiturs, and they are wonderful in that respect. They certainly make a writer's life significantly easier. But yes, peculiarities, oddities, the absurd, and the surreal very, very much inspire me. It is. It's getting on to. It is exactly 27 minutes past 2. The Tower of London. What magical properties do you think it still has? Do you believe it's guys? Well, here's an odd one regarding the Tower of London. If anywhere is haunted or cursed, it would be there. It's certainly a definite candidate. But we all know the story of Richard III and how supposedly he killed his nephews, the princes, who were in the Tower of London for their own protection. Now, history is really, really out on that subject. It's made popular by the Shakespeare play that he did, or at least had them killed, but we don't know. We simply do not know. What we do know is that one day the princes were in the tower, and the next day they were not. Not found dead. They were gone, completely just vanished. So Richard he certainly had the motive, because if he killed his eldest nephew, in fact, if you kill the pair of them, he becomes king automatically. Indeed, because it always comes back to the fucking Lion King with me, doesn't it? Scar is more or less a perfect amalgamation of Macbeth and Richard III. So he would have had the motive. Would he have had the means? We don't know. Here's what we do know. In the either the early 2010s or the end of the first decade of the 21st century, renovations inside the Tower of London found 2 child skeletons. They were buried. They were hidden inside of a wall, and they removed them. But here's the odd thing: all requests to do DNA testing on them, because there are descendants of the Plantagenets. This is how they identified that the body they found in the car park was Richard III, because the Plantagenet house still has living descendants. But all attempts to DNA test them has been denied. Which begs the question, who the fuck are they hiding it for? It was, what, it was about 600 years ago, my God. But, what's that? Yeah, no, but they just, whoosh, gone. Which is one of the things Henry Tudor, later Henry VII, was able to use as license for his legitimacy to take over, because if they had just been found dead, then no one could have called Richard a usurper. He would have just inherited the crown as being the late king's brother, and the late king, having no heirs, he inherits the throne. So, actually, frankly, because what we do know about Richard III is he was a very astute politician, because that's what he was trained as. He was not trained to be a king, but he was trained to be something more like Lord Chamberlain. He was trained to be a statesman. So he would have known that it would have caused him a hell of a lot of trouble if he had them killed. But something happened to them, and then 590 years later, they find two child skeletons hidden in the wall. So, yeah, the amount of weird shit that has gone on inside the Tower of London, if it was cursed, I can't say that it was. As for any magical properties involved in it, I can't say. Being erected as it was by William the Conqueror, I think he laid the foundation stones for it in the early 1070s. I think he got to it pretty quickly. But the Normans were not known for that kind of thinking. What I do know is that for the longest time, it was actually a zoo. One of the first principal occupations of the Tower of London was the Royal Menagerie. And a really strange thing of where things overlap is, again, my memory appalling, because for a very long time, St. George was not the patron saint of England. There was another one. He was a monk. He was another martyr, as indeed most saints become. But St. George, famously traveling knight. I always get these two mixed up, because there was one who was Spanish and one who was Assyrian. There were two St. Georges. I can't remember which one is the patron saint of England. And traveling knight finds his way to England. Village in distress. Big fucking dragon. Kills the dragon. Becomes a saint. Hurrah. We all know that story. We all aspire to it. But tricky thing. Dragons don't exist. Here's what we do know. In the Tower of London, which, as you know, sits on the fucking Thames, which is the estuary of which goes all the way to the Channel, and has many rivulets that go off in any number of directions. Something escaped from it in the 11th century. Heaven help me, I can't speak Greek at the best of times. But yes, it was a crocodile. William II, I think, at that point, had been gifted a saltwater crocodile, Nile crocodile, from another traveling emissary, and it escaped. So it's just possible that what St. George killed was a crocodile, which to a Dark Age English peasant, or indeed a Dark Age traveling knight, would have looked an awful lot like what they said dragons look like. It always comes back to Scar, yes. Why, that sounds like some magic spookery. Why would they hide it? I don't know. It's not as if any of the Plantagenets can. I mean, the Plantagenets they use, they're not called that anymore, but the descendants who they used to successfully identify the body of Richard of York were Canadian and Catholic. So they can't have the throne legally. So I don't know what they're worried about. But it does make you wonder. Pardon me. If you don't smoke, I really advise you take it up so you can be really cool like me. um, but yes, anything that goes on behind hidden doors, anything that involves the state and the crown, and particularly the crown of England, the crown of Great Britain anyway, and her dominions, is a deeply occult phenomenon. Seems a bit of the embarrassing side of the crown. Yeah, just a touch. Well, if it was for anyone, it would have been for the Tudors. So we'd have to look for their sympathizers. But my most darling and beloved cephalopod, if you want to go ahead and write a horror story where the princes in the tower are sacrificed so that Henry Tudor can get the throne, I will help you with a historical background. Just Elizabeth Bathory was buried into a wall. Why are Hungary and Britain so connected? It's the disappointing thing when you study history, because 9 times out of 10 the answer is trade routes. But like anything else, Hungary and Britain were I think anyway, I could be wrong. I'm not very good at mental geography, but the western and eastern extremities of the Roman Empire. So there must be a common thread deep within. Oh, it's all going on. I'm clicking them faster. I'm clicking them slower than everything. Yep, that's the way. That is the way. Or become the dragon, if at all possible, and wait for your donkey. Yeah, I don't pause for that kind of thing myself, and I'm fastidious for detail. Oh, Ava, so wonderful to have you here. I hope you are well. Isn't this nice? I've got my own little clan. This is so pleasant. But yeah, it's an odd old time. Because sometimes I think the story of St. George was extrapolated a little bit, because obviously the national animal of Wales is a dragon. So the patron saint of England slaying the dragon has particular psychopolitical connotations. What is this? Oh, I was right. Yes, and if it was Elizabeth Bathory, the 17th century, and the princes in the tower were the end of the 15th century. So these things have a slow build-up. It's the quiet accumulation of history. Oh, don't you worry. Don't you worry. You take your time. I'm going to be here a while. But then there's because I've always enjoyed the Legend of King Arthur. I think if you're interested in mythology and you live in England, you can't really get away from it. But it's always really annoyed me how they miss out all the stuff that came before. Because there's this book, in fact, it's the book, if you want to start with the particular version of Celtic mythology that exists on this island. Well, Ava, before I get into that, we haven't had that many, so you feel free to go right ahead. You rub those hands and ask, and ye shall be answered. It's called the Historia Regium Britannia, or A History of the Kings of Britain, which is basically the origin myth, but it includes a hell of a lot of actual history. Like Caesar's invasion is in it, and Claudius's successful invasion is in it, the withdrawal of the Romans in the year 400, and the famous line of "look to your own defenses." And then and this bit really happened, the last governor of Britain, the last Roman governor of Britain, that is, was a chap called Constantine, who, when it was all going to hell in Rome, looked to what was going on and said, no, here's what's going to happen. I'm emperor. I am emperor of Britain, or king, as the locals called it, because they didn't have a word for emperor. And he just decided he was king of all of Britain. Now, in the Historia Regum Britannia, because this is the start of the Dark Ages, when nothing was really written down, that's why they're the Dark Ages, Constantine is the grandfather of King Arthur. But there's this part, because everyone only likes Merlin. Merlin is my guy. And there's this fantastic story about when he was young, when he was about my age, in fact, he went completely insane because he discovered that he was actually who we think of, and it drove him mad. Because contrary to what J.K. Rowling thinks, discovering that you have these incredible occult powers would drive you crazy. And Merlin, as he was of old, went wandering around the country trying to regain his sanity, and was earning a few coppers by being a soothsayer. So by this point, and this is just a wonderful little bit of mythology that I enjoy and isn't taught very often, so I'm sharing it with you. He was captured by the new High King, Vortigern. We don't know if Vortigern was his name or was an old word for High King. Vortigern was a real person in history, or he may have been people in history. We're not certain. But he had very, very stupidly invited the Saxons into England because he thought they would just build a bridge for him. Turns out they fully invaded. And, and then the Angles came along and we started calling the place Angleland. And you can see where things are going. But Vortigern apparently got wind of this soothsayer and kidnapped him. And there's a place called Dinas Emrys. It's a mountain in Wales, because Wales has quite a few of them. It is known for its peaks, is Wales. And he says to Merlin, listen, we're getting fucked by the Saxons here, and I'm trying to build a fortress. I'm trying to build a fortress on that mountain. But every time we start building it, it falls down. And every night it screams. And I imagine Merlin said to him, what, the mountain screams? He says, yeah, the mountain screams. You can hear it for miles. It's just the worst noise ever. And Merlin says, okay, well, what the fuck do you want me to do about it? He says, well, I'm going to push you into that cave because I hear you're really smart and you're going to find out what's going on. So Merlin, probably not having much of a choice, is forced into the mountain. And he finds out why the fortress will not stand. And it's because underneath it, there are two dragons who are trying to kill each other. But here's the thing. Not one of them cannot get the better of the other. It's a bloodbath. That's what the screaming is. These two, there's a white dragon and a red dragon. And they're just tearing each other apart. And Merlin, through his various machinations, works out that the red dragon is the native dragon. It's the British dragon. This odd little thing. It is now known as the Welsh dragon, but in the original stories, it's the British dragon. And the white dragon is the Saxon dragon. And while they're fighting, nothing can be built. So he does his shenanigans, because it's been a very long time since I read the book, and it's not particularly big on detail. Otherwise I'd have tried this shit myself. He puts the two dragons to sleep, and he turns them into pigs. And just to keep a bit of a theme that's going on with this conversation, he interns them under the mountain. And the story goes that we're completely fucked if the two of them wake up. He didn't kill them. He didn't take sides over either of them. They're just sleeping there under the mountain. Oh, hello, hello, hello. Oh, this has been going on for a little while. Hands are rubbed together. What have we got? Divided by sight says, can you just do audiobooks? I would love to. I would dearly love to. I have done a short story. I've done one of Very Bad Books' short stories, and that seemed to be reasonably popular. One thing I do want to do, I had this idea, planning it well in advance, over the Christmas, of doing a reading of A Christmas Carol. There's 5 chapters in it, so I had to do like one chapter a night, and we could have a little Christmas bedtime story. As I already asked him how much I was editor rates, and he's seen this. Yeah, this is fairly par for the course. And yes, I'm under orders. I am most definitely under orders. Under orders, rather. Sorry, I read the word orders. No, that's not mine. What is this? So I don't know what was asked for this stream or others, and even if I have watched your content, I retain nothing. That's perfectly reasonable. Hell, I don't even know what I'm saying or what I'm doing, so don't you fret about it at all. Oh, we have a question. What genre would you write in if you could only write in one? Holy shit. I think it would be the genre I write in now, which is weird fiction, because it occupies a nice little nexus point, a nice little meeting place between enough others that I wouldn't go completely fucking insane. In doing so, there's just enough science fiction, horror, fantasy. You can sort of blend in anything. So it's a nice little middle place. I like these border realms. So magic can drive you nuts. Anything was everything. Yes, it's. I'm more than happy to go along with a character that is being torn inside out by this nonsense, if it maintains the illusion. Where do you hope your channel will be in a year? Good Lord, I don't know, and this is the trouble, because I'm getting the impression I should really start thinking about this sort of thing. But the channel only exists because in the last year of my MA course, I was told that we had to start doing something in terms of social media. And I couldn't bear the idea of Instagram, and I only had a tepid relationship with Twitter. So doing a YouTube channel seemed like something that, at least I get to make something. At least I'm being a little more proactive than I perceived could be said of the others. But I don't know. I really want to make a few more films. I really want to start making films again. Me and my friend were going to do more, and then the lockdown started. And I am living currently in the black spot of the failed English quarantine. It looks like my region of England is just going to be left to die. So, because we didn't vote for the current government. So get your what now while you can. I may not survive this. Oh, Katia, speak of the devil, and she will appear. How are you, my darling? Yes, the man, the myth, the marsupial. How long is your beard? I think at present it's about... I think it's about 2.5 inches. I have cut it. I have cut it recently. It is 2.5 inches. But I have a remarkably small chin, so it looks longer than it actually is. Oh, what's going on? It has jumped to the bottom. I do apologize. Beard question. Everybody is ecstatic that Katia is here, but no one more so than me. I'm so glad that I have become synonymous with some of your Saturday nights. Hello. Charlotte Armstrong, what an absolute pleasure. Hello, just finished streaming and popped over to join the fun and spread some more chaos, please. Please bring the chaos. This is what I live for. Do not hesitate. I am yours to command, all of you. Don't say that what? What did I say? What did I say that I shouldn't say? I have lost my own context. Oh, and the blind mage is here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming along. It is incredibly kind of you. Love our father-in-law world. You write a story. It's back. I did. It was my my first. Well, I sort of did. I started, and it was in essence a. You could call, for lack of a better word, you could call it a prequel, but I wanted to write a single story on its own, and it was about the relationship between Merlin and Uther. So it started with them in various because from what I've read, contrary to popular ideas, the story of Merlin originates in Scotland, not in Wales, as is often considered. So it started with them as children, one in England, one in Scotland, through the Dark Ages, and then they meet, they collide in the story as we know it, and it would have culminated with Uther's death. But there are so many versions of a King Arthur story that I just couldn't bring myself to. I thought if I was going to try and tackle the world of traditional publishing and fail, I would fail with something that was 100% my own. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down on my own goddamn terms. That is not for me. We have. Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. Here it is. If you could co-write a book with anyone alive or dead, who would it be? If dead first, it would have to be Teddy Pratchett, from whom I learned I wanted to be a writer and what a writer could do. I was always, I find it very moving, rather, when Neil Gaiman was, because incidentally, have you noticed that Neil Gaiman had a remarkable stroke of luck in his writing teachers? He had Duran Duran, Douglas Adams, and Terry Pratchett. That is no small education right there. Also, with the latter two, it just goes to show, don't be friends with Neil Gaiman because you'll die too soon and he'll get your archive. But and because he was a young man once, he'd never written a book before, and when it came to doing Good Omens from one of his short stories, Pratchett apparently rang him and said, "Are you doing anything with that short story you gave me?" And Gaiman says no. And Pratchett says, "Okay, either sell me what you've written so far and I'll write the book, or we write it together." To which Gaiman very movingly said, "We'll write it together because I'm not a fucking idiot." It's like Michelangelo popping around and asking you if you want to paint a ceiling. He's a remarkable man. And for anyone living, whichever author tuber gets to me first. I am a shameless whore in this respect. Oh, I hope you do. I do most sincerely hope you do, because it is very deeply seated. No, don't you worry, Ava. You go along. In fact, everybody feel free to answer every question that comes this way. Do you mean, is there a series called Pendragon, or do you just mean Pendragon in general? Because if so, I don't know the series. Oh, yeah, that is about the shape of it. I would amend it slightly to a plague rat, but I saw this thing when all of this started, passed around, which said, pick your post-apocalyptic character. It said just who you would be in the world to come, and it was sort of like all this thing like road warrior and baseball bat wearing leather chick or whatever. And at the bottom there was just a mysterious wanderer who calls himself Doc. I was like, yeah, that'll do me. That'll do me just nicely. I have skipped it again because I am a feckless fool. Was it something you've Googled that would require the classic phrase of "Don't worry, I'm a writer"? I can answer this. The tensile strength of human organs. I got it into my head that what a particular scene needed was because bearing in mind the story I was working on, and that I will get to write one day, was throughout the story, the character it's just getting worse. There's no upside to his day. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was going to get to a point where the only way he could escape was to rappel down a wall, but the only thing he had to hand was the corpse of the last person who tried to kill him. And I spent a good long time reading about the tensile and the fabric nature of the intestines. And what I found out was, in theory, you could rappel down the side of a wall using human intestines tied off at the other end, but they would be so remarkably slick that unless you tied it around you, you just slip off. But in doing so, you change the pressure, and there would have to be enough to trail on the floor, because otherwise, the weight of even a moderate human being would snap them. They're not that strong. They're good for what they do, but if you pull them, they're not going to last that long. So, in terms of first drafts, my poor character is still stood on a ledge with a handful of human intestines, because I still haven't worked out how to get him down from there. But that was probably my most arrestable reading. That is not mine. That is not for me. There we are. So on my to-do list is collaborate on a book with Dal and Marco. Anybody else will have to take second place in that lineup. I want to write with Tony Morrison, no doubt. Marlon James. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. Good Omens is a goddamn masterpiece, but I must say I was a little disappointed with the TV series. But for not just because the child actors were appalling, but I really do think they should have got someone other than Neil Gaiman to write the script, because no one doubts for a moment how much he loved Terry Pratchett as a man, as a friend, as a teacher. He dearly, dearly loved him, and he dearly, dearly loved the book they wrote together, as indeed they should. But in adapting it, he didn't lose a goddamn word. So some of the drama completely dropped off, because all of a sudden here's Frances McDormand reading it very well, it must be said, but things that shouldn't have to be there just because the one liner in the book works. I know he wanted to keep Pratchett's voice alive, but his voice is alive. I just thought it was a little close. You name the time and the place, and I'm yours. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. The voice doesn't go that high. I'm trapped in a particular register. What do we have? What do we have? We really have plans to do some writing collaboration. Yes, I've got so many plans, and one day I'm going to actually get to do them. I've gone down Google research holes, but ended up discovering some very nasty mafia killing techniques. I may use them in one of my books one day. You have to. Your lawyer will now tell you have to, because that's plausible deniability. Everyone appreciates the intestines. One of our streams I asked that question, and someone was looking up how long the human body would burn for. Ha! Did they get a satisfactory answer? Asking for a friend. I was told that an old way of killing someone and getting away with murder, it doesn't work today because the science of pathology has come so far. But it actually begs the question of how many people were considered to have died of natural causes, and no, they just they were actually murdered. Was the injection of an overdose of insulin under the big toenail, because pathologists didn't look there and they wouldn't have found a puncture wound even if they did, and it just looked like pancreatic failure. Again, they can tell these days, but don't skip on me. There we are. We all have those moments. We all have those people that just that's it. It's like being spoken to. It must be what a calling to the priesthood is like. I think, anyway, as somebody who was being set up for the priesthood, I can understand it. Depending on the heat of the flame, mass of the body. Yep. I had heard about the blood vessels, but don't you drown slower in hot water? I've heard that you drown more slowly in salt water. It was a preferred torture method by various parts of the Inquisition to dunk someone in salt water, because it's actually it takes a much longer time to go. It depends on how hot the fire is and how big the body is, but I think it could go for quite a while. I've heard that in traditional Hindu cremations, it's an all day affair when they build the pyres, and they have to get into a particular heat, and it takes a long time. That was in a Miss Marvel episode I saw. Injected in. Oh yeah. Well, they did it wrong. If they didn't, I sort of like the idea. I want somebody to write a character that is very much like Miss Marple, a very sweet, darling. Nobody would look at her twice. Old English lady, but the crimes she's solving are like something like Silence of the Lambs, like really messed up psychosexual shit. And that's what I want. I want Miss Marple to go to Hannibal Lecter for advice. I really want to see that crossover. So if any of you fabulous people could get onto that for me, I would be tremendously grateful. Also, can we discuss how well, I was going to adjust my glasses then, and I'm not wearing them. Am I still here? Let me just readjust myself slightly. This is what happens when you buy secondhand furniture. There we go. Did you miss me? Yes, so As a child, I was very good with religion. I was raised Catholic. I had an entirely Catholic education, and I knew the Bible from a very young age. I was very studious, and to say theological is incorrect because I'm talking about the age of 5. So it means I simply knew what the teacher was talking about. And all of a sudden, I found that, yeah, because I was still taught by nuns, and the priest would come in every couple of days or so, and all of a sudden they were talking to me about what I wanted to be when I grew up, and um, had I ever, was I interested in what the priest did, and indeed I was interested in what the priest did. But what they didn't realize was the reason I was interested in what the priest did was he got to play dress up, and everybody listened to what he said. So I wasn't so much leaning towards holy orders so much as I was demagoguery. I wanted to be a dictator. Unless I could have gone straight from, primary school to Pope, I probably wouldn't have been all that interested. And my grandparents really thought I was going towards it as well, because the years passed on, and the point of the matter was I was just very good at it as a subject. I could just remember, but they were taking it as that I'd had this calling, and the thing is, I stopped believing in God when I was about 6. Not for any massively intellectual reason, I must admit, but because I really loved dinosaurs, and there were no dinosaurs in the Bible, which to a 6-year-old is a perfectly logical reason. But yeah, for a time I was being, and this actually followed me for quite a while into like secondary school. This idea that I was going to be a priest. I think it's because I have a very distinctive approach to speaking, and I was the only one in my school that actually read the fucking Bible. I was always, so whenever they turned up, whenever the clergy turned up, I was always just, I'd be like, oh, it's like, fuck off! I'm an atheist occultist. You don't want me. I promise. The blind mage is starting the bidding, but I am not 100% certain on what, because I waffled a little and I lost track of what I was talking about. I'm feeling like I need to say, don't worry, I'm a writer now. Yeah, there really should be a search bar for this sort of thing. But alas, there isn't. That's the same reason I started questioning Catholicism, no doubt. If I've said it once, I'll say it again. If the book of Genesis was true, the first line would be, in the beginning there was light. I've often wanted to try that, to write rewrite the holy text. I had an idea for something I wanted to write once, and it's the only time that my hand has been stayed, because I thought to myself, not that I'd worry about offending anyone, but I stopped to be responsible and thought, okay, hang on, if I'm going to write this, I'm going to need to think about it more. And the idea was, because one of my favorite aspects of theology is this small part of it called theophanatology. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the idea of theophanatology, but you soon will be, and you'll see why I love it, because it's completely fucking insane. And I love the insane mental gymnastics people go through. And it's an attempt by certain what's this? Oh, Charlotte, you're leaving us. Well, thank you very much for coming along. It is deeply appreciated, and I hope very much to see you again. But yes, it's an attempt by certain Christian theologians to reconcile atheism and theism, deism. And the solution is, okay, so God did exist, but he doesn't now because he's dead. I think they took Nietzsche a little bit literally, but their idea, I mean, theophanatology literally means the study of the death of God. And the idea seems to be that the crucifixion was, strap in, kids, because this is fantastic, that the crucifixion was a paradox because God is eternal, omnipresent, omniscient, but he incarnated himself as his own son. He incarnated himself as a human man. Jesus, as that incarnation, was not omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, nor was he immortal. So, in the act of the crucifixion, God appears to have made a miscalculation because when Jesus, the man who could die, was crucified, it killed God the Father, who shouldn't have been able to, but did because he was made mortal. And in so doing, he could not return to his throne. It is the most amazing. It's like watching Star Trek fans try and work out a continuity error. But the thing I wanted to write was going to be called God is Dead. And it was going to be based on the idea that it's based in heaven after this crucifix paradox has occurred. And suddenly, the angels don't know what to do. Basically, what I'm saying is I wanted to write the death of Stalin via the life of Brian, a touch of good omens, and the thick of it. I wanted to write a power struggle between angels trying to get a hold of it, trying to get a hold of the throne. I was so in love with religion, not believing in it, but as a mythology that I often read biblical stories. It was like Bible fan fiction. I would love to revisit it. It was such a good story. It really was. It's an intriguing piece of work. And the comparisons between them, I really, because all monotheisms are ultimately exactly the same. I think the only functional difference between the Judeo-Christian version of Genesis and the one in the Quran is that in the Judeo-Christian version, God fashions Adam out of dust, out of soil, and in the Quran, he manufactures him out of a clot of blood. And also in Judeo-Christianity, contrary to popular belief, the serpent is not the devil. That's something that was invented by John Milton in Paradise Lost. And in the Quran, the serpent, if I remember correctly, is a jinn. It's not a demon. But I like that idea that the Torah is the original property. The Bible is the mega blockbuster sequel. The Quran is the HD reboot. And the Book of Mormon is the sexy fan fiction. I quite like that. Favorite music, not necessarily to write with, just favorite music in general. I listen to a lot of blues. I'm that kind of guy. I'm a massive Tom Waits fan. I do listen to Tom Waits a hell of a lot when I'm writing. But I couldn't really pick it down to a particular genre. I like my blues, my bluegrass rather, and all manner of goddamn things. I must confess I am very picky, but Lord knows there's plenty of music around that you can pick and choose. 4 people? Who is here? I have a cerebral hedonist, and I have Dal, but I don't. Actually, this is going to be an opportunity for me to practice something, because it's something I wanted to know in the future. So if you can just give me a moment. I want to know if I do this. Oh, shit. Hold fire. Hold fire. I'm being shouted at by an advert. Oh, damn it, Google. Right, I want to know if I do this, take these out. Right, tell me if you can hear this. I'm just going to listen to this until someone answers me. That's a point, actually. Copyright. Why do I need these? No one's talking to me. Why have I had these on the whole time when no one's talking to me? Well, that's useful. That's good to know. I've been playing with the idea of throwing in some intro music or screwing around with it a little. But yes, that's the sort of thing I listen to when I'm working. It's I've never thought about spiritual fiction. I mean, the whole thing is rather a spiritual process, surely. It's the conceit I've always had, anyway. But I have been wrong before, and I will continue to be wrong until somebody provides me with a good enough reason to start being right. But I am yet to get one. Well, is there anything else? Are there any more questions forthcoming? Nope. My brother's keeper, as indeed we know. Orson Welles apparently tried to make an adaptation of the New Testament, but he was going to base it in the 1930s Dust Bowl. And I think that might have been a very interesting idea. He was actually getting funding from a couple of churches, but for one reason or another, it just fell through. But I think that might have been interesting. Oh, I see, the bidding war. Well, how extraordinary. I'm Lord, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, or indeed, I think it is just ladies. I never can tell, but yes, my brain of late is a fizzing popcorn bag. There's so much I desperately want to do, and I'm hopscotching shamelessly between one project and another. So each one appears to be proceeding at the rate of 3 sentences a day, and since I can't do anything short, they'll probably all get finished roughly 10 minutes before my death, which, well, probably not, because as I mentioned earlier, I do not like my chances of surviving this. Do you plan to publish your stuff independent or perhaps chapter by chapter here in readings? That would depend on the project. Dal has read the book I have at present, and I don't think I could read that. But I must confess, I have been looking at what Adega Outlaw has been doing on his channel, and that seems like a very interesting way to go. I think if I was going to do something like doing it on here, or publishing chapter by chapter on the channel, I would have to work out a project specifically for that, because I always have the shape of a thing in my head when I'm writing it. So if I'm thinking print book, print book, print book, I can only. But if I'm thinking in terms of doing something digital, then yeah, maybe I could get on board with that. I'm certainly open to the idea. I'm pursuing traditional publishing not because of any great idea of elitism, but because I have a major axe to grind and point to prove that can only be served by going through that particular devil's den. well, as I said, I am tempted to do that a Christmas Carol one over the Christmas, but I think I would have to. Oh well, that is V1, my darling. That's the one I was talking about. So you can probably see from the short amount you may have read so far that it would be a bit of a bugger for me to do. But yes, I would certainly consider, and indeed have been considering, doing something in that mold. It's just trying to think of what, if you see what I mean. Because Lord knows I'm struggling enough to find a form in which to do my Shakespeare book. And the good Lord, the three dark fantasies are something else. My time travel story is very odd. I'd have to think of something. Well, this is the thing I was talking about earlier now, because I've talked to you and the Cerebral Hedonist about it, of doing that serial that are connected short stories. Seeing as there's clearly a lot of interest in it, I'm inclined to go forward because I would love to work with the pair of you, because we were talking to Marco about it earlier, the Cerebral Hedonist, and we've got yourself, of setting up a writer's room for this project, if you are still interested. In which case, I will start pulling together a writer's bible, because I have an idea in my head of the process, and this is the thing. This is the struggle that I'm having. And my most beloved cephalopod, that feeling is absolutely mutual. But I think this is the agony that I'm facing. It's the agony of choice. There are a lot of options here of what can be done. The only thing that's stopping me from making another little film of a better quality than the last one, because while a lot of people were very kind about my clown film, it wasn't of the best. Maybe next time I'll get somebody else to hold the camera. But the only thing that's stopping me from doing that is the fact I can't go outside. So, but yes, I'm sort of baffled by the amount of things that can be opened up. I mean, it still absolutely bewilders me that apparently there are 6 people spending their Saturday listening to my waffling. That is frankly fucking bizarre to me. Hello, Eva, you're back. You're back. Oh, I have been kicking around this idea of a serial of connected, basically short stories, but they'd be episodes. They'd be short stories performed, but they'd line up like a series, and of gathering a writer's room of fucking weirdos. It's in its tentative moments. Good Lord, I didn't know you'd watched it. I'm so pleased. Thank you so much. Yes, I realise that, and I do apologise. It wouldn't have been that way if I didn't think Luke's face when I was, hurting it was so incredibly funny. It's exactly that. I've said this to other people before, that I'm being pulled in every direction, but with equal force, which means I stand still. What do you need to improve the quality of the film? Well, in the case of my only experiment with it, it would have been having somebody else assisting, because I was doing more or less all the camera work while being in it. So some of the shots didn't work the way they were supposed to be because I am not left-handed. So having at least a third person would have, or another actor, because I'm not a very good actor. So attempting an online publication. Ooh, what are you publishing? Frankly, at this exact moment, I have no idea. I am percolating the ideas, as indeed I always am. The fact that I ended up with a book that I could send to an agent is bewildering. It's absolutely astonishing that that came out the way it did. For all the good it's done me. But we shall see. It's just about getting started. And if there's one, I said this on Dal's stream earlier, if there's one thing I struggle with, it's starting. I can keep myself going and I can finish it, but beginning, that's the agony of it. Yes, do tell me what you are publishing. I am very interested. Ooh. What's it now? But I'd like to add a monthly publication, journal, magazine, I don't know, short and flash fiction and indie writer focus articles and things. Well, that's exciting. That's very exciting. Yes. It sounds all in that regard. And because what I was planning with this was a sort of extension of, because one of the things I really want to do with my life is I would love to be a showrunner. I want to run one of these TV shows. But I really don't have the means of doing that. What I do have the means of doing is a series of audio. So the specific idea with this collaboration is to have the group and then the media form of it. But again, we shall see. I am bedeviled, ladies and gentlemen. I am absolutely bedeviled with the amount of shit that's going on in my head. I keep falling back on my alternate history. I've got this alternate history novel that just keeps coming back to my head, and sometimes it's a trilogy, and sometimes it's a standalone, and it just goes on and on and on. And I've got my one about Moriarty, about the days following Moriarty's death, and it's just fucking hell. I don't know how I'm ever going to get this all done. I have ideas from slow produce because I like to be well prepared. I know it's shocking. It really is. I can't. The thing is, I sort of I rail against formality. So I've tried making those to-do lists. I've even tried the spreadsheets, and I can spend hours working them out, and then the second I'm looking at it, it's like, no, I don't want to do it now. You can't tell me what to do. I'm an artist. Things like that. I'm never happier than when it's just me alone with the pen and the paper, and I can start getting it going. But like I said, I think I've started my new book about 4 times, and it's just not. just not coming together. I think it's because I'm sidestepping into a new form, sidestepping into a new genre, or form of genres anyway. So having leapt, it's like going from hot water to cold water almost immediately, because the book I've just written is very high octane. It's jumping here and there. It's very high energy. It's skipping genres and characters, and now I'm going into something that has one ostensibly straightforward story, one focus, one that, and it's like, oh no, 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 what am I doing? I've given myself culture shock. My birthday is a private matter, and I can only think that you're trying to get to my accounts by asking that question. No, fuck it, it's the 16th of August, which, oh, Dal knows. Dal knows my birthday. Of course, of course. What? My web kept blipping. I finally turned on the hotspot. Ah, ha, ha. Welcome back, welcome back. Gah! Today is full of tiny annoyances that are starting to irk me. Lol. I sympathize entirely. Well, I've been working on this plan since December. Please, please, please keep me posted. This sounds absolutely fascinating. Yes, I've never understood it. I'm a remarkable Luddite. I am so out of my comfort zone with all of this. It's phenomenal. Well, I wish you the very best of luck. Why a paperclip? I know how to pick a lock with a paperclip. I learned that. Well, you need two paperclips. You need one for the wrench and one for the pick. But and it doesn't work on all locks. But generally speaking, you can do it. Yeah, the wrench and the rake, as I have now just remembered they're called. Limited liability. Ah, I understand. My God, what did you do to my darling Katya? Why would you do this? Oh, wow. So I just glanced over at Twitter, and oh, how the mighty have fallen. You love to see it, gang. You love to see it. You really do. I wouldn't have the faintest how to start an LLC. I think if it all goes to hell, I'm just going to start rubbing. I was going to say robbing folks, but then I said rubbing. So I'm going to own it. And it'll be up to them to decide in what capacity I will be robbing them. Depends on how much they give over. And how nicely they ask. I am not going anywhere near the share the screen button again, Dal. Not after what happened last time. I am so far appeasing the gods of StreamYard, and I have no desire to screw it. In my state, it costs a ton and required an agent or a record. I must admit, most gracious cephalopod, that your tweet absolutely cracked me up in its phrasing. God, I hate that woman. I never knew that vapidity could be so offensive. It's kind of remarkable, and she's such a terrible writer. It's annoyingly bad. It's the nostalgia goggles. I understand why people would like something when they were little and carry it forward with fond memories. I understand that, and I sympathize entirely. For the longest time, I was a Doctor Who fan. I am no longer, but I was. I understand these things. But Holy hell! What a bad writer. Bad writer. Bad writer. Go to the corner. You're gonna sit there and you're gonna think about what you did. But if I had a couple of $1 billion and lived in a castle in Scotland, I don't think I'd give a shit either. Hell, I live in relative poverty in England, and I don't give a shit anyway. That was the closest I've got to Scouse for quite a while. I think I'm developing a cold, or perhaps Verona has caught me at last. We would never know. We would never know. Well, that's exceptionally kind of you, Dal. There's not a lot of evidence for it in this exact moment, but I appreciate the vote of confidence all the same. So, insofar as this Q&A has any Q&As, does anybody have anything else any more wisdom they wish put upon them, forced upon them, indeed? That's yeah. We did for some. We did for some of them, but for some of the shots rather. But the tripod I have is not particularly tall, and it also doesn't work for moving shots that had both actors in. We very much needed another pair of hands. I am waiting, Ava. I await your signal. Did I try duct tape for the camera? Or for J.K. Rowling? Because I don't like the woman, but I wouldn't go that far. No, I haven't. I haven't, Dal, because traveling is a remarkably expensive hobby, and I have never had disposable income, not in that regard, anyway. So I am bound to this island by ancient decree. I cannot leave until our Lord and Savior Ken Dodd returns to us. Publishing a collection of poems inspired by the blind maid. She did a poetry collection called Share with a Son, a book of it. Very nice too. Yes, because I've never had a particular wanderlust either. I sort of I go where I have to. It's not really an issue for me, but I don't worry about it that much. my hematitis went tragically turned into full blown misanthropy. But I mean, after when I was when I received payment for that job I did, I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely over the moon that I could pay my rent early for the first time in a long time. So if nothing else, my credit score was absolutely thrilled. Absolutely, which is marvelous. I don't particularly want to travel as much as I just want to see those places. Traveling itself is awful to me. Yeah, I'm not a great fan of traveling myself, and it's just because whenever I've done the length of the island, it's always been for something. I've never had the opportunity to just go and be and explore and just relax. It's always for work or a job or something and rushing around, and it just ruins it for you. So I've never particularly enjoyed it. Although I must say the fact that the greater majority, in fact, more or less the entirety of my social interactions is with people on the other side of the Atlantic. It makes this lonely little island feel a little lonelier. What's this? I saw a photo spread once and read about how they try to keep it as untouched as possible while made. Oh, Dominica, yes. I I would highly recommend that they just shoot on sight. But as I say, a total misanthrope. I really don't know why I clicked that because I just read it right there. But hell, it's clicked now. Behold, I'm awe-inspiring. Hiking back from Edinburgh was a fucking trial. I was hungover as hell. And I never advise mixing cans of Carling and rum. Lethal, lethal. Don't know what I was thinking. Yes, I again I agree entirely. I've got. I mean, it's too hot now. This is obscene. So, where in the States are you, Ada? Because I think our hedonist is in Texas. I think that gets a yeehaw. Ride 'em cowboy and whatnot. America's too damn big. Man, I said it. I read a thing once that said it was an essay from a sociologist, and he'd worked out that the Southeast Texas hot and sticky. Yeah, that's what we like down here. We like it hot. We like it sticky. It's oh god, it's all happening. It is all happening here. I'm out outside St. Louis, Missouri. In Illinois, we are side of the Mississippi River. Nice. I have a loose idea of where you're talking about. It amuses me, no, because I see the word Iceland, and Iceland is the name of a chain of very affordable supermarkets over here. So I was like, I went to Iceland for a week. You just couldn't find frozen peas. I want to say there's no horses here, but we have a lot of horses. We got too many damn horses. I don't know why that's amused me. I want to say there's no horses here, but goddamn, we've got so many fucking horses. Somebody take these horses. I found one. I was in my bed dressed as my wife. And cows and deer. I didn't know you could farm deer. We're learning lots today. Oh, Verona's got me, I tell you. You're watching a dying man. Kind of middleish. Oh, it's all happening. It's all happening. Oh, there's so many. No, here we are. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Too high. What is this? No. Wait a minute. It's home to the world's largest ketchup bottle. Willing to believe that might have been a mistake. Ketchup? Catsup? Is that a thing? Because I thought that was just a Simpsons joke. Is catsup a thing? Holy hell. The Iceland supermarket is in Dalsborough. In part of England I live in, if you see anybody riding a horse that isn't a police officer, even I want to beat them up. But you can ranch venison. No, then again, I suppose you've got the room for it. Yeah, I mean the venison you get here is all from Scotland. They have hunting season up there, and well, isn't this nice? Because we can all gather together and we can learn things about each other when it comes back and forth. It's really nice to just host this kind of symposium. Yeah. Yes. I think it will not be very long before somebody is hosting the What Now Memorial. Oh, please fucking God, no. Oh, I thought I'd broken my glasses. Well, we are all going to the hedonists. We're going down to hot and sticky Southeast Texas around Christmas time, and we're going to take a load of kids. We're going to take them to see the deer, and we're going to show them what's for dinner. Yes, I will, Dal. I am, once I'm certain that I'm not actually dying, I am going to put out a call through the various pages, and I'm going to put together a more substantial schedule, because I know that our most beloved cephalopod has expressed an interest, if that interest stands, hedonist. And I spoke to Laura of Trope Trinity Trilogy, or whatever it was, and she was interested. And I think I owe Katia a second go. It would be tricky with Howard, because Howard was interested, but it would be tricky finding a time frame that works for both of us, because he went and did that thing where you take two people and you make a third and a fourth, and I think he's done a fifth. I can't remember, but it sounds like too many people to me. But people and their hobbies. Oh, my darling, you are too good to me. You're all too good to me. I really do not deserve it. Spawn, that's the one. That is absolutely the one, yes. Miniature collecting. Yes, these are Fabergé people. These are Tonka toys. Squalling germ bags, I think the phrase is. No, Dal, of course I do. I'd never not want to do one with you. That's rather goes without saying. Huh. So yes, I will be doing more collaboration streams, maybe from next week. If I can work it out, and if I don't actually die. Which would be tremendously inconvenient, because if there's one thing this stream should have shown, it's that I've got a fucking lot to do. And I'm going to be really pissed off if it kills me. We are more or less done rambling, Ava. We are within the last 10 minutes. I don't have anything to read now. I am spent. My files are empty. Except for things that are not reading worthy. That are completely fractured. Oh no, Ava, you've said it now. That was Freudian. That was a Freudian slip right there. I'm on to you. Well, yes, we are more or less at the end. Is there any other pressing business anybody has for me before I slip back into obscurity? Come now, don't be shy. Step into the light. That was me being Smaug. I hope you liked it. Well then, where are you? The Illuminati. I am only a neophyte. I can't really speak for the higher echelons of the UK. Basically, I'm the coffee boy. I'm the intern of the Illuminati. Thank you very much, Ava. That's very kind of you. At some point, I'm going to have to start making some more content to hopefully keep these people, whoever, whatever, and however they are. But that remains to be seen. Sorry, this just caught my eye. One of my favorite YouTubers has just put on a poll on Twitter that says, since Harry Potter houses are now cancelled, which of the 4 houses do you prefer? Sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic, or choleric? I like that. Dal. Listen, if I'm like ever interested in a woman, can I like send you to her as a reference and use that sentence? Because that would serve me in good stead. And you'd be a pal. I know I'm sort of flustered with that comment, Dal. I mean, oh Lord, coming down with a case of the vapors. Oh, don't be shocked. It's only little old me. If I keep on with that, that's going to become Eeyore. Nobody, but nobody, wants sexy Eeyore. Or do they? This could be a whole new thing for me. I'm not blushing, Ava. I am a fat man in summer. But I am spiritually blushing. What can I say? All I've ever wanted to be is a devil. And somehow the Overtube community has made me feel that, gosh darn it, I just might be one. Yeah, poor Smaug, whatever the fuck. He had a hell of a time. Poor bastard. Terrible, terrible films, but I really did love Cumberbatch's performance as the dragon. That really did for me. Right. All things considered, the silence is deafening. So, unless there is any final business, I really had to go and store back. Well, don't you worry about it. Don't you worry your pretty little head. Yes, unless it is any final business and you have chocolate feelings or hot and sticky feelings that must be attended to, I will say good night. Oh, good night, Ava. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. Any final business, my loves? What was that? The feeling, my darling, is absolutely mutual. Ah, very well. You hunt me up anytime you are able. I'm never very far away. Apart from those, 3,000 miles of water. Well, an absolute pleasure. But, yes, I think the time has come. The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. But other than that, the time has come to say good night. It's very much appreciated, Sister Mine. Don't you fret. But yes, this has been an intimate, low-key, but intimate, comfortable, cozy little Q&A where much was learnt. Not a damn thing about me was discovered, which is exactly how I like my Q&As. So I would like to thank Alistair Crowley. I'd like to thank King Richard III. I'd like to thank King Charles I and J.K. Rowling for making it possible for me to keep the conversational scent off of me. And it's 1 hour, 47 minutes. Yes, we can cut it short a little bit because, frankly, I need the lavatory. I will say in my standard manner, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, all, thank you so much for joining us here in What Now Vault this evening. I wish you long life, good health, and rapturous things that will cover the fact I can't get the end broadcast button to come up. There it is. Good evening.